overwhelmed, but good. And you?
Yeah. Good. I'm good. How's your mom?
Terrible.
Terrible. It's terrible.
Yeah.
How close is she to you, distance-wise?
About 40 minutes.
Okay, not too bad.
I mean, of course, you can get traffic, and it could be
It'd be 3
longer.
hours.
Yeah, but it's usually not bad.
Yeah.
It's not like you have to get on a plane, you know.
Right. I know. I wasn't sure where in Israel she was. Yeah, that's really hard. Really hard.
Oopsie. Okay. So I don't want to let people in until we see Angela and Hugo. But you can meet Felipe, and Jose, I guess, has his microphone open but not his camera.
Anyone else speaking? I mean, who am I? I just have the bios for Jose and Felipe.
Right, because Angela and Hugo didn't send me.
How are you?
Hey, José Alberto, how are you?
Oh, and you?
Good.
So now you are our mod. Sorry. With beer.
Yes, very. Where's yours?
It disappear. Disappear.
You've kept. This is how you keep your. See, this is how I kept my sanity. This is probably how you kept your sanity.
Yeah. So Sina is there.
Yeah, we're gonna let Sina go over to be an attendee. So thank you for coming. We'll see you at the end.
Hi.
In a minute.
Yeah. Hi.
Okay.
Oh.
No, I'm putting everybody so that we don't see anybody until the end. So only at the end we're going to open it up.
Okay.
Otherwise it gets too confusing, I think. Oops. No. Angela's having trouble getting in. Give me a minute. You guys talk amongst yourselves.
Okay. So Alberto, how's Lisbon?
It's okay. Then we can go out and dinner and have a dinner till 10:30.
Good. So the vaccines have there are more vaccines now?
Wait, Angela, you said you had a problem getting in. You're okay now?
I'm okay, yeah. Thank you.
Okay. But I was just coming to check it.
Yeah.
Okay. So good. I'm going to open it so people can start coming in. I just like to make sure everybody's here. Okay. So now you'll see people starting to come in.
Hi. I have no sound.
You don't hear us. We don't hear you. All the microphones and cameras are off until after the presentation, and then we'll put them back on. So Florbella, tell me if you don't hear us. No, if you don't hear us, you can't tell us because then you won't hear me saying that. So that doesn't work, does that? Okay, let's see. Let people, okay, good. People are starting to come in. Don't know why. Okay. Let's see. Oh, I have sound now. Okay, good. Wonderful, Florbella. Thank you for telling us. Now, this one, actually, we know we have people from around the world. So it'll be very interesting. Everybody throw into the chat while we're waiting for everybody to come in, throw in where you're signing in from. Make sure to do it to panelists and attendees so we all see where everybody's signing in from. I know there are other Israel people here too. I saw that. Yeah, see, I knew we had from around the world.
She's in.
Yeah. Hi, Joyce. I'm going to switch you over to be an attendee. So just so you know. So as I'm doing this, everybody, I will repeat it a few times for the next 3-4 minutes. Your microphones and cameras are off if you're an attendee. We're going to let all the presenters present, and only afterwards we'll open up the cameras and the microphones to allow you to discuss. Okay. Oh, good. Yeah, here's Hugo. Wonderful.
Hi there. Good morning.
Hello. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depends where you're from. That's why we're throwing into the chat to make sure we know where everybody's from, because otherwise it's very embarrassing when it's the middle of the night and you say good morning. We have a few people that wrote in. People are still coming in, so you guys can talk. You don't have to be quiet.
Need some coffee or something, you know, a little.
Oh, well, yesterday we had a Hebrew Egyptian cafe, so everybody was there with their coffee, and it was really that really helped keep it. We were on for more than 2 hours. That's
great. That's really great.
Yep, and people didn't want to get off. I said enough.
You can let them stay in the waiting room or something.
9 o'clock at night, I was done.
Yeah.
No, I was done. But yeah, I think that had to do with bringing your coffee with you.
Yeah, for sure. Stimulates. So, right. So, but I'm happy to introduce everyone, but I only have bios for Jose and Felipe. Hugo and Angela, would you like to send me a quick bio, or how should we do it?
Well, did you send it?
I could send you a bio, probably.
Okay.
You want me to send it?
Yeah.
Yes?
I thought it was only going to be Jose Alberto and Felipe's, but please. And Angela, would you like to send just a few lines? You know, doesn't have to be too extensive.
Yes.
Okay.
Can you send me your email, please?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, you can do PE. I'll put it in, or you send it to the chat. You can put it right in the chat to me. Yeah, and then I'll just put it in the chat, and then I'll cut and paste.
Okay.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah, we're going to move Dove over to be attendee 2. So people may pop up in the middle. I'm just warning you, but we'll move them over as soon as possible. And then we'll open it. So those who are still coming in, throw into the chat, please, where you're coming in from. Although I know Dove is from Israel. Or you could throw in where you're from originally. That could be interesting too. We already have a question. Look at this. Your book is so powerful that we already have a question. We'll relate to it later, Yitzhak. So. He was actually giving you a promotion. Should I read the promotion now before we open? Or should we wait for everybody to come? I'll give the basic. This book is very important to show a balanced picture of Portugal and its varied society and Jewish past. So that's from Yitzhak. So say, there you go.
Oh, okay. Very
I
nice.
didn't get that.
Very nice.
Okay. So I don't like to keep people, whoever's here waiting. There are more people coming, but in the meantime, we will get started with everyone's permission. So as I've said a few times, although people have come in since then, for the duration of the presentation, you will be, those attendees will be in attendee mode, which means your cameras and microphones will be off. You won't be able to access them. You can throw, if there's something urgent you need to say, please throw it into the chat or into the Q&A. I will be monitoring it, as will two other people here. But in the at the end, after the full presentation, we will allow you to open your cameras and microphones, and we encourage you to please do that because it makes it much more lively and interesting. And I know there's a lot to say to unpack in this book and this volume, and there will be a lot of discussion, I am sure. And I look forward to that because that often is what makes it even more interesting. So I would just want to say welcome. I want to pass it over as soon as possible. So I will just say it on behalf of the ASF Institute of Jewish Experience, we welcome you to our New Works Wednesdays. And we hope to see you in the future as well. And now let's experience some Portugal. I am passing it over to our co-host, Professor Ronnie Perellis, and I will go to Blake.
Thank you so much, Drora. It's really my honor. I am Professor Ronnie Perellis, Professor of Sephardic Studies at Yeshiva University. Also, I'm the director of the Rabbi Arthur Schneier Program in International Affairs, which is a proud co-sponsor of this very exciting panel today and of the entire New Work Wednesdays events in collaboration with Drora, Arusi, and the American Sephardi Federation. This is really an exciting way to get new ideas, new scholarship out into the world and find virtual forums for us to meet. And I hope that it will inspire us when we're able to finally get together and be together in person. And seeing some old friends on this makes my desire to be in person, enjoying a coffee with a colleague and learning new things from them, even more. And I want to just introduce this book, The Diasporas of Jews and New Christians of Iberian Origin Between the Mediterranean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean. This is really the sort of book which brings together worlds. We connect from the Atlantic into the Mediterranean and beyond. The sort of research that all four panelists here do. That's exactly the sort of research that we need to understand this complex reality. This is not a unidimensional story of a people. This is not one nation state acting alone. This is about border crossings and about transformations. And so it's very exciting to have people who are specialists in many, many areas coming together. So without further ado, let me introduce some of the panelists today. José Alberto Rodrigues de Silva Tavim is senior researcher at the Centro de Historia, Universidade de Lisboa, and chair of the seminar, The Jews in Portugal and in the Diaspora, in the same institution. He's the author of more than 60 articles and chapters published in Portuguese, Castilian, French, English, Italian, Hebrew, Turkish, and Arabic. Professor Tavim also belongs to the executive board of the Society Sefarad and presided the project Portuguese Jewish Medieval Sources, together with Maria Filomena Barros. He is the editor of Hamsa, Journal of Judaic and Islamic Studies. He is also the author of 2 books on Jews and Portuguese expansion and co-edited more than 4 books between them in Iberia, in the Iberian Peninsula and beyond, the history of Jews and Muslims. Felipe Meneses is a PhD researcher in literature, the Faculty of Letters in the Federal University of Minas Gerais in Belo Horizonte, Brazil, with a research stay at the University of Antwerp, Belgium, a year ago, and he's a member of the Jewish Studies Research Group at the University of Minas Gerais in Brazil. And as we move around the globe, we go to Dr. Hugo Martinez, who is a researcher at the Center for History at the University of Lisbon. He holds and his doctoral thesis dealt with social and religious history of the Portuguese Jewish community of Hamburg during the 17th century. For that project, he was awarded a 2-year PhD scholarship by the Rothschild Foundation, Yad HaNadiv, Europe, as well as short-term grant by the German Academic Exchange Service. And his main fields of research are the Portuguese Empire, the history of New Christians, and the Sephardic diaspora. And last but not least, Dr. Angela Sofia Benoliel Coutinho is a researcher at the Lisbon University of Lisbon and at the Coimbra University. She has obtained her PhD in contemporary African history at the University of Paris, Sorbonne, in 2005. From 2001 to 2003, she taught at Nanterre University in France, and she's interested in studies of Cabo Verde, and as well. I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble reading this. She's presently carrying out studies financed by the Rosa Luxemburg Foundation and the Codicera in Dakar and Cabo Verde Jewish Heritage Project. She regularly collaborates with the CEDAC in Portugal and with the Amilcar Cabral Foundation of Cabo Verde. And I'm so excited to hear more about these interlocking worlds, and I will turn it over to you. Thank you so much. And I hope we meet either in New York or Lisbon or Cabo Verde or somewhere else wonderful.
So I start now. Okay.
Yeah, you start now. It's all on you.
So first of all, good afternoon from Lisbon. I'm very grateful to Drora Russi and the Institute of Jewish Experience, as also to the Rabbi Arthur Schneller Program for International Affairs, and of course, Ronnie Perelis from Yeshiva University in New York, to allow me to discuss the book I published with other persons, between them my distinguished young fellows, colleagues, Angela Benoliel Coutinho and Hugo Martinez, present in this session also. So, this book is really the result of a conference that took place in Lisbon in 2019 in the scope of the Society's Sefarad, Society for Sephardic Studies, funded some years ago by the late Professor Yom Tov Assis. So when the society decided in Beersheba that the next conference should take place in Lisbon, so I also start to think about the topic of the conference. So Lisbon, as you know, is in the west extreme of Europe, in the Atlantic, but very near the Mediterranean. So it's in the crossroad during the centuries of people that come from the north part of Europe and come from the Mediterranean. And as you know, Lisbon, it was also the capital of a big empire from the Orient to the Americas. So I feel that the topic should be this. And of course, this is not a book concerning the proceedings of the conference, but it has really some papers resulting from this conference. So the book has really 4 parts. So, and it's about the people that from Jewish origin that remain in Portugal with a new status. It means an official status of Catholics because they were converted after the expulsion of 1496. So some remain in Portugal, some traveled to the empire, to the colonies of Portugal, to the Orient, to the Brazil, etc. And some could run away, mostly because of the persecution of the Inquisition, to other parts where can be free Jews, to South France, to other very well-known places, as for example Hamburg, Amsterdam, London, Livorno, as you know. So this book is about these converso people that remained in Portugal or that went away. But it's also about people that have remote Portuguese origin or not, that are allowed to come to live in Portugal in the beginning of the 19th century and during the 20th century. I'm speaking mostly about the people that come from Morocco. Some have really Iberian roots, others don't have, but now they are all Portuguese. They are Portuguese citizens. They also come to Cape Verde. And this is why we have a special chapter about these people that come from Morocco, because they are at the beginning of the new Jewish community in Portugal, when Jews were allowed to live in Portugal, so in this period. So we have 4 parts in this book. The first part concerns the people that remain in Portugal as conversos. We have a very important chapter of one of the main specialists of the Portuguese that live in Portugal in the Middle Ages. I'm speaking about Professor Maria José Tavares, that have a special chapter about the conversos of Tomar, that is a very well-known city, the city that have, as you know, a small but very important synagogue. So it's about the destiny of this community. And we have a second contribution of Professor Maria Leonor Garcia de Cruz about the connections between conversos and royal finances, because some of these people were rich, yet as Jews, and they continue very related with the court, also with their new status of Catholics. And we have another contribution of Emilia de Oliveira about a very different topic, that is the doctors. So there was a group very important of doctors in the Middle Ages, and they continue to be with the status as convertos, as new Christians, both in Portugal and in the diaspora. Of course, here normally with the status of Jews, open Jews. So we have a second chapter now about the diaspora, what is happened to these people that could run away, because mostly of the cases because of the Inquisition, the persecution of the Inquisition. So we have a paper by Hugo Martinez about the nation of Hamburg, but he is present, so he will speak about this chapter. Another also about Hamburg from Forbella Frade, about those doctors and their importance, and they sometimes bad relations with the Christian doctors in this place. Also, we have in this chapter a paper by Miquel Beltrán Lunar and Meritxell Blasco Orellana about this case about Kabbalah, so about Abraham Cohen de Hara, so a Sephardic Jew that went to South France and then to Hamburg and finally to Amsterdam. And as Miquel, that is a specialist in Kabbalah and the Jewish philosophy, said, is the only book about Kabbalah wrote in Castilian in this period. And I have to present myself a paper about Brazil, not because I am a specialist about the Jews in Brazil, but because there is nobody writing about the topic. So I feel that it was not possible to publish a book about the connections between the Mediterranean and the Atlantic without a chapter about Brazil. So I profit from my research about people that went to Brazil, people from Jewish origin, to write about a subject that it was not really focused yet in this matter. I'm speaking about the people from Jewish origin that came to Brazil, not directly from Amsterdam, but from the other parts of the diaspora. So I'm speaking about people that come from South France, from Livorno, from Hamburg, and also people that come from the Ottoman Empire, and some Ashkenazi Jews. So they were a minority comparing with the people that come from Amsterdam, but this show how Brazil it was important as a kind of new El because, as you know, Jews in Brazil don't have the same rights as Amsterdam. They have more rights. They could have properties. They can deal to the small commerce, etc., opposite to what is happening in Amsterdam. So we enter in the third chapter concerning the contemporary world. And as I said before, this chapter has 4 contributions about Jews in North Africa. So we have a first contribution from Antonio Jorge Afonso concerning the relationship between the negotiation of the captives in the hands of a small elite of Jews of Sephardic origin that later are really well connected with the Portuguese authorities. A second chapter about Angela Sofia Benoliel, about the people that from Morocco that come to Portugal and to Cape Verde, but she will speak about this chapter. And also a chapter by Felipe Amaral Menezes about a writer, also from Morocco origin, but he was born in Brazil yet. So it was one of several, but he's not very well known, but he will speak also about this subject because he's present. And finally, a very interesting chapter by Jonathan Hirsch about the construction of a synagogue in the Nile. So where they want this community, they want to stress how they belong to the Egyptian nation, because in the construction of the synagogue, they take as paradigm the pharaonic Egypt. They want to show also in the synagogue, in the construction of the synagogue, they want to come to the past, to the Egyptian past, to stress they are here interested in to live in Brazil. To live in Egypt. So to make part of the Egyptian nation as Jews. So finally, we have a fourth part, also concerning modern Portugal. This case here in Portugal. So we have a first chapter from Ana Gabriela de Silva Figueiredo about important topic of the Marranos in Portugal. So the international contribution to help the Marranos from the north of Portugal to re-enter in the normative world. And the famous person of Capitão Barros Basto, very well known. Then we have a contribution from Isaac Kerem about one person from Curaçao whose memories almost forget, and how he died in the Holocaust because he went to study in Leiden and then he was arrested in Holland. And finally, a chapter by the very well-known Professor Irene Pimentel, she's very well known. She wrote a lot of books about the Holocaust in Portugal, the refugees, and she received several prizes, portanto, Fernando Pessoa Prize, also about one of her publications. So she writes about really Jewish refugees and anti-Nazis, about the Portuguese during the Second World War. So, as you can see in the abstract of this presentation, this book consists of a set of contributions with different times and chronologies on general topic of Jews of Iberian origin after the late 15th century conversions. But really, there is also 2 chapters about people, about Jews that choose Portugal to live when the Inquisition was abolished, and so they could live as Jews in Portugal. So I finish now my presentation, and maybe the first one in the list of the chapters, that is Hugo, can have a presentation of his topic in this book.
So good afternoon to all. Thank you, Jose, for this introduction. First of all, it's a pleasure and an honor to be able to participate and in this event organized by the American Sephardi Federation. So my communication today is a result of my PhD dissertation that was defended in the University of Lisbon in 2018. This dissertation, so the focus was the Portuguese community of Hamburg, community of merchant Jews of the Portuguese nation. Which is well known because of the works that had been done over the last tens of years. This particular community of Hamburg, nonetheless, was a little bit forgotten by scholars in the way that much more information exists about all other communities. For example, the community of Amsterdam has a really rich sources and a lot of information we know about it. However, the community of Hamburg only has 2 books, 2 protocolar books, so they are called the Livros da Nação. And these books had been studied before by Michael Studmund Halevi, and also by the Casutos, the 2 brothers that lived in that community. The fact is that these books had been studied by German scholars with some knowledge of Portuguese language, but I think they were never studied by Portuguese scholars, and this is very important because there are some Portuguese expressions that relate to Portuguese culture, and these expressions most times can only be understood by someone who is very much at ease with the Portuguese language. So to start my communication today, so it will mostly focus about the topic of social welfare and charitable institutions of this Portuguese community of Hamburg. And it will be focused between the years 1652 and 1682. For that purpose, I undertook an analysis of the various social institutions as the Hebrad Bikur Holim, the Gwemilut Hasadim, and the Etz Chaim, as well as their contribution in the assistance of the poor and the needy, and the preservation of the social fabric and harmony of the community. Furthermore, the study delves into the nature and scope of each of these institutions and their importance in the socio-economic context of the community throughout the considered period. What I found throughout my research is that while the community of Hamburg followed largely the existing practices in other communities of the Western Sephardic diaspora, there are, however, important differences in type and quality of the assistance provided. These differences result not only in specific demographic and socio-economic conditions, but from the very orientation promoted by communal leaders regarding the organization of social welfare in the congregation. As I will show throughout my communication today, the centralizing policies conducted by the Community Council, the Mahamad, over the period in consideration had a nefarious impact in the development of private welfare institutions. This fact, compounded with the restrictive measures taken after the Sabbatian upheaval, ultimately led to an increase in precariousness and a gradual decline in population in the later decades of the 17th century. The main source utilized throughout my research was, as already said, the protocol book of the Portuguese nation of Hamburg, which is a written record of the sessions held by the communal leadership between 1652 and 1682. So according to Kaplan, Bernfeld, and Svetchinski, one of the main motivations of the Portuguese communities to make a close commitment to charity was a concern to preserve their image before Christian authorities. The stigma of poverty and the problems that were more directly related to it, such as crime and marginality, were issues that were very much on the minds of the Portuguese leaders. These began especially from 1640 to become worrisome with the arrival of more and more destitute families fleeing a plethora of social and political disruptions. Among these stood in particular the rebellion in Dutch Brazil and the mass immigration of Portuguese Jews towards Europe, the fall of Olivares and the Spanish bankruptcy of 1647, the Ottoman-Venetian Wars of 1645, and finally the Khmelnytsky uprisings and the resulting Jewish pogroms in Poland and Lithuania between 1648 and 1654. Such a large number of people simultaneously assessing the nation's services represented not only a social and economic problem, but above all a logistical one. In this sense, the coordination of efforts to assist the poor required a coherent and unified response that guaranteed the commitment with which the community was confronted. This commitment to combat poverty was therefore necessary, as the Portuguese leaders pointed out, so to better achieve the security of their privileges, as well as to avoid undesired attention from their opponents, in particular the vicious attacks from the Lutheran clergy and parts of the local population. In addition, the Portuguese leaders remembered a centralized organization of communal welfare would be indispensable. Such preoccupations were common among leaders and authorities in early modern Europe. As previous studies from J.P. Guton, Jean-Pierre Guton, Natalie Zeman-Davis, Brian Pullen, Bronislav Geremek, and Robert Jute have shown, the rising concern of early modern societies with the poor was a defining feature of this period. Having communities and cities introduced new sets of laws with the purpose of containing, controlling, disciplining the paupers in their midst. Although the reasons for this control varied extensively among secular and religious authorities, the so-called strategies of marginalization, as put by Robert Jute, became a widespread phenomenon throughout Western and Southern Europe. In the Jewish tradition, the practice of tzedakah, generally understood to signify charity, yet more correctly translated as righteousness, was more than a voluntary act of goodwill. Indeed, it implied an ethical and religious commitment to help the needy through voluntary donations so that the latter could become self-sufficient and achieve economic independence. Despite the prevalence of these centuries-old cultural conceptions, the practice of poor relief varied enormously from community to community, revealing a disparity of practices and attitudes that can only be properly understood in the context of their specific historical particularities. The case of Hamburg is no different, and in order to fully understand the impact and characteristics of welfare activity in that community, an in-depth analysis of its charitable institutions is of major importance. Founded on the image of Jewish sacred societies, the Hebra Kadisha, the Hebra de Bikur Cholim of Hamburg was responsible for the assistance of the sick, as well as the caring of the dead and their families in the ceremonial preparations associated with burials. Consisting of 2 administrators, or Parnasim, appointed annually by the Mahamad, its administration was in charge of managing considerable human and financial resources. Some of its responsibilities included the hiring and supervising of doctors, nurses, and assistants, the maintenance of the nation's cemetery and its adjacent areas, as well as the purchase of funeral supplies and the provision of financial aid to the members and their families. In addition, the Hebra made sure that all regulations regarding the size and type of graves were scrupulously observed. Any violations in this area were promptly reported to the Mahamad and sanctioned according to their gravity. The Hebra's difficulties in dealing with the high number of poor and needy became a constant source of concern for its administrators, especially from the end of the 1660s. At the time, deep budget cuts and a tighter spending policy promoted by the Mahamad would make the situation worse, leading to significant reforms of its administration and social coverage. A new law, implemented in September 1668, would reinforce this trend by limiting the assistance of the Hebra to members with more than 3 years of residence in the community. Indeed, this law did not come as a surprise. Precisely at the time when several disciples of the then renegade Sabbatai Zevi came to the community in order to benefit from its aid, the community would undergo a profound transition that would result, at least in part, in the adoption of a more judicious and restrictive demographic policy. New restrictions on the treatment of certain types of diseases would also be imposed. As of October 1667, a new decree prohibiting communal assistance for cases of protracted diseases placed the Mahamad as a sole body responsible for such cases. In the same vein, the relative independence previously enjoyed by the Hebra administrators would now be considerably reduced, having these to pay from their own wallets all expenses considered superfluous by the central government. In times of great need, the lack of nurses to assist patients was addressed through ad hoc resolutions, such as the hiring of short-term services at the expense of long protracted contracts. This is the case, for example, when in September 1665, Abraham Serrano, Abraham Ashkenazo, and the Berber Salomon de Medina were hired to look after patients with malignant fevers, and were charged with making themselves available to the Hebra for a minimum period of 24 hours. On the other hand, the administrators of the Hebra were faced with the constant absence of doctors and their growing reluctance to adequately respond to the institution's needs. Although motivated by a duty of responsibility towards the community, the low wages they received placed serious obstacles to their commitment, leading them to neglect their duties in favor of more rewarding work. In order to remedy this difficulty, the Hebra could count on the support of the richest and most influential members of the nation. Abraham Senior Teixeira, who was one of these, was in this case the richest member of the community, offered to appoint a full-time physician covering personally for his salary. As explicit in the corresponding excerpt, this mitzvah was intended to improve the service of the Hebra due to inconvenient news that circulated concerning the lack of assistance and care for the sick of the nation. As the scope of the Hebra extended over the years to encompass an increasing number of tasks, the responsibility for assisting the deceased was delegated to a new brotherhood, the Gwemilut Asadim, which took over the management of the nation's cemetery and funeral activities from 1675 onwards under the Mahamad's supervision. The privileges of this newly created brotherhood, confirmed in April 1675, indicated the functions, activities, and obligations to be fulfilled by each of the parties involved, in particular between the administrators and the membership. Although the early months of the new brotherhood were marked by disciplinary irregularities, notably the unlawful gathering of several of its members at the institution's gates, the Mahamat succeeded in correcting problems that marked its first year of existence, all seemingly without calling into question the confidence in the new brotherhood. Mindful of the importance of this mitzvah, the Mahamat would extend its activity for an additional 10 years, hoping that the community would experience greater benefits in the future, given the zeal with which the brethren exercise their charitable works. Close quotes. Founded in July 1653, with the aim of supporting the poor to study, the Brotherhood of Etz Chaim was created through the initiative of 3 zealous members of the Hamburg community, Mose Israel, Joseph Yesurun, and Acham Robi Leon. Staying on the sidelines of central oversight until 1672, when its capital was incorporated into the general treasury and its administration integrated into the Talmud Torah school, the Etz Chaim Brotherhood of Hamburg remained one of the few communal institutions to operate fully autonomously for almost 20 years. Its administrators were co-opted from among the brethren of the Brotherhood, having the duty to meet the particular needs of the community's poor students, as well as to hire the services of private instructors.
I want to make sure we have time for the other ones as well, and we have time for discussion. So if you have a last sentence just to say.
Okay, so more 5 minutes?
Okay. Half a minute. Because I want to
okay.
Just the last sum it up.
Okay, no problem. So summing up my work, I would like to stress the differences in the charitable activity between Hamburg and Amsterdam. So the main differences have to do with the fact that following the Sabbatean upheaval, religious upheaval, the leaders of the Hamburg community made sure that every religious and social private institution that appeared was going to be strongly regulated. And so the fact that this happened made these communities. So some of these communities had to close. Some of them were also eliminated by the central government, and this caused an enormous lacuna in charitable activities promoted by individual members of the community. So this problem, for example, did not exist in Amsterdam, where we have, for example, the Dotar, the Abi Yatomim societies, the Temimim Darech, Maskil El Dal, Onem Dalim, also, for example, Mazon Abanot. So in Hamburg, contrary to Amsterdam, there weren't these private, most of them private societies to deal with social assistance. And this created a huge outflow of members. The population shrinked, and also the community started to have a crisis, a social crisis that extended in the last years of the 17th century. And so this is the major difference between the two communities, and this is mainly the result of my study.
Thank you so much, really. Okay, who's next, Jose?
The next is Angela Benuliel. So Angela, okay.
And I want to make sure we try to keep it to about 10 minutes, so we have.
Okay. So thank you very much for this opportunity. I will start reading my communication. on this small community of Jewish merchants from Morocco that went to Cape Verde in the 19th century. So during the decade of 1860, the Moroccan Empire has gone through a disturbing situation from the political, the economical, and the social point of view that did not exclude some episodes of persecution of Jews and Christians. As a reaction to the help requests from the Jewish communities in Morocco, in February 1864, the King of Portugal, Dom Luís I, has granted, I quote, protection to all the Israelites of the Moroccan Empire, end of quote. The migration flow towards the territories that integrated the Portuguese Empire in Africa has then increased. At about 500 kilometers from Senegal, the archipelago of Cape Verde has 400 square kilometers, 10 islands and several islets. It has been discovered in 1460 by navigators working for the King of Portugal, and it had two different stages of peopling, having the first occurred in the Southern Islands, where an important slave trade center has been created in the Atlantic, in the town of Ribeira Grande, which is now World Patrimony classified by the UNESCO. Having known phases of decay and growth of its economy, the archipelago's history has also been marked by droughts that have caused devastating famines from the 18th century. So in the 19th century, it has gone through a new stage of economical development with the activity of British coaling stations in the island of St. Vincent at the north. In 1862, the archipelago had 97,000 inhabitants. So the authors agree in stating that in the 19th century, the decline of the colonial Ancien Régime society has occurred. However, the crisis provoked by the droughts and famines, as a consequence, have become even more frequent. In what regards the economical activity, the most profitable activities were the harvests of cud bear, exclusively by the Crown until 1850, and the salt exportation, mainly to Brazil. Other products were exported like clothes and rum for Guinea, maize from Madeira and the Canary Islands, leather for the United States of America, living animals for the Antilles and for the African coast, and food supply was also given to the ships that scaled the islands. Another important information is that in 1834, Portugal has opened its ports to foreign navigation, and in 1842, a treaty was signed between Great Britain and Portugal, giving to the British subjects the same rights as the Portuguese subjects, in order to settle in the Portuguese colonies and develop economical activities. So some of these Moroccan Jewish merchants were British subjects. However, a treaty had also been signed between the Moroccan Empire and Portugal in 1798, allowing Moroccan merchants to trade in Portuguese ports. On the Cape Verdean society, it has also been considered by the authors that in agriculture, primitive methods of cultivation were used. A subsistence agriculture existed mainly, as well as monocultures for exportation, mostly cane, sugar or rum, and later on coffee. So many of these Jewish merchants from Morocco became coffee exporters and also landowners and coffee producers. With the intensification of the navigation in the Atlantic, British coaling companies started to have an interest in investing in the Porto Grande at the St. Vincent Island in the north, considered as being the best natural port of West Africa. So in 1840, St. Vincent was the most important coaling station in the mid-Atlantic for the British Empire. And in 1900, it was the fourth biggest port in the world. The business opportunities in this island, on the one hand, and the economical decay it had from the beginning of the 20th century, on the other hand, certainly explain the significant, though short-term presence of Jewish merchants in this island in the 19th century. Other changes have occurred in the Cape Verdean society, mainly the growth of a group of mestizos that were more than 60% of the population at the end of the 19th century. They also created a new middle class that had other consume habits. Another structural transformation was the enhancement of the migration flow to the United States of America. So the remittances sent by the immigrants became more and more an important income for the colony after the taxes of importation and exportation of coal. So another important data to explain this migration flow is that, as in the other territories under Portuguese domination, Inquisition was abolished in 1821. And during the 19th century, an important British Protestant community has settled in the St. Vincent Island, where they also organized their religious life. In the Santo Antão Island, where a bigger number of Jewish merchants from Morocco have settled, there were also Protestant families, from the Azores, namely. Knowing that in the Cape Verdean archipelago, the overwhelming part of the population is Catholic. I can tell you the sources that are original for these studies. First of all, the sources I have consulted in the Lisbon Israelite community, but also the main mark of this presence are 4 cemeteries in 3 islands in Cape Verde, Santiago, Santo Antão, and Boa Vista, where we have 32 tombs. It was also possible to consult other archives in Portugal, the Portuguese consulates of Tangiers and Gibraltar in the historical diplomatic archives. Also the opinion asked by the King of Portugal to the Council of State of the Overseas. The books of registers of requests of visa in foreign passports in the National Archives, and also in the Gibraltar National Archives, those same passports. And I have also conducted some interviews with the older living descendants of the families that settled in the archipelago. So in this study, we have gathered data on 93 individuals that lived for a certain time in Cape Verde from 1840 and 1900. These individuals belong to 51 families. I can tell you the names very quickly. Abacacis, Abitbol, Alves, Amzalá, Canaori, Atias, Odai, Azaniel, Azavei, Azancot, Azulai, Bedunas, Benazon, Benahim, Benara, Benatar, Benchimol, Bendaham, Ben David, Ben Oriel, Ben Roche, Levi Bentub, Boaruna, Bohana, Brigham, Kaji, Cardoso, Coan, El Azri, El Caim, Ezagui, Gabai, Ismini, Isaqui, Lassarin, Lesen, Malca, Levi, Mamã, Nauri, Niun, Pairmi, Pimenta, Pinto, Sabat, Serruia, Urbin, Guanon, Zafrani, and Zaguri. 35% of them were born in Morocco, and 15% were born in Gibraltar. Others were born in Portugal and also in Algeria. One of them was born in Spain. Well, amongst these 51 families, about 40%, being 20 families, really settled in the archipelago or left descendants there, and in which economical activities they invested that allowed them to stay in this archipelago. Well, in the first generation, a relatively high number of individuals belonging to these families have dedicated themselves to the agriculture in parallel with merchant activity. They represent 40% of these families. We found out this through the interviews and also the archives in Cape Verde. We saw that they were mainly coffee producers, as I said before, and coffee was exported to the European markets, knowing that its price has risen in the international markets at the end of the 19th century. Other 40% have mostly dedicated themselves to international commerce, being one also a ship owner and another one an industrial. I have inspired myself in the study of Fátima Sequeira Dias on the Moroccan community in Azores that went to this other Portuguese archipelago at the time by the 1820s. And she explains the economical model of importing clothes and exporting. In Azores was oranges, and in Cape Verde I saw that it was coffee, as I said before, but also physic nut, rum, limb, straw, purge oil, and maize. So different payment methods were also adopted by these merchants based on credit, which allowed them to have more customers. One of the main figures of this community that I have noticed was their, how can I say, big, strong mobility from the Mediterranean to the Atlantic and in the Atlantic ports. So we have many data concerning these families because many Jewish Moroccan women also came to Cape Verde, where I am presently. I'm now here in Cape Verde. And we can see the marriages, the births, deaths, and many other, the trips that they made to France, Portugal, Great Britain, Brazil, and even to Morocco, mostly to Mogador, although most of them were from Tangiers, and also trips to Gibraltar, of course. So I can give you more detailed data if you want to know. We have also found out some connections with Mozambique, for instance. So other Portuguese colonies in Africa that at the time were Mozambique, Angola, Guinea-Bissau, and São Tomé e Príncipe. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, really. And enjoy your time in Cape Verde. One day I'll get there too. Okay, and Felipe, please.
Hello, thank you. Hello from Brazil. My presentation, I'm not going to tell you a communication or give a speech, but I'm going to talk about my research in this book is about the Brazilian writer from Jewish origin, which his name is Leão Pacífico Ezagui. He was born here in Brazil in 1980 in the city of Itacoatiara. This is a small inland city in the Amazon state in the north of Brazil. This is the Brazilian state, which we have the Brazilian, the Amazon rainforest. This is the region. So he was son of Jewish immigrants from North Africa, from Morocco, probably. Make many other, like many other immigrants from there, they went to the forest, from the jungle, and live there in this very rich region. And this village and are dedicated to the exchange of the goods from the forest, like nuts, skins, and even precious stones. When Ezagui came to Brazil, his family came to Brazil, they were in the rubber, the rubber economic circle. There was a rubber economic circle in the Amazon rainforest region, and many immigrants from North Africa came to Brazil in this moment from our history. So we have here this writer from Jewish origin, and he wrote 5 books. My main research is about his books, but we have to talk about the Moroccan immigrants to Brazil in this region, and we have some studies. We have about to 300,000 people or to 500,000 people of Jewish origin in this region, but we only have 10,000 Jews remaining in the Jewish religion there in this region, because the first immigrants, when they came to Brazil, they get involved with the people from here, and they become just Brazilian as us. And they mixed it in this region, and they have this big and enormous generation of people in this region, in a big contribution to our culture. And about my research, I have his books here. I can show you the books because this is very interesting. It's only in Portuguese, those books. He was not a very known writer here in Brazil. He's only belongs to his region. In this region, the Amazon, we have other Jewish writers So we have, I think we have the most important one is Leão Pacific Isaac, because it has 5 books. We have Marcos Ciroia, we have Paulo Jacob, for example. This is Paulo Jacob. Chão de Maiaconá is written in a lot of words of our indigenous origin. So we have Leão Pacific Isaac is the most important. Yeah, I have to show you. This is one of his books. It's Contos Amazonenses. And the main point of his books and his stories is about the rainforest. He was a lover of the rainforest. He loved a lot of the rainforest, and he talks about it in his books. And also, he talks about the missions. The Jewish immigrants came to Brazil. They became, in the first moment, working with them as merchants through the rivers of the Amazon rainforest. They are working with the goods from the forest, especially the nuts and the rubber. And in those books, especially this one, Contos Amazonenses, and this one, his last one, which was this. You can see here a boat, you know. Can you see this boat here? This is a typical boat used by the Jewish immigrants there to sell their goods. They use these boats to bring goods from the forest and leave and bring the goods from the cities to the people from the forest. They make this exchange. There was a very important economic exchange did by the Jewish missions there in the Amazon region. So more about and other books of Leão Pacifico Isaac, he was talking about hunters in the rainforest. The people from the Brazil, we say caboclo. It's a name from the we used to name these people from this region, and his main focus on the first books is about a hunter. He is a hunter in his book, and he talks about a lot of hallucinations and histories, popular histories from Brazilian people there in this region. He's very interested about this. And the last one is really important about, he talks about the Martians. But all his books are from biographical background. This is very important because they are samples of the history. And Leão Pacifico Isaac was a very passionate writer from the rainforest. He loves a lot this. And the man, I'm going to tell you the last words from his book. And he talks about the Jews in the rainforest. And the last part is like this: the Jews who raided in the Amazon jungles and who remained there until they die, seduced and enchanted by the immense beauty of the place, like this. They knew how to love. They were more patriotic than natives themselves. They gave birth to children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, and ended up colonizing the village. It was very common indeed, to see caboclos with Jewish names and traces of Jews. And there was even those who practiced the Jewish religion. Jews knew how to love the earth and the creatures. Those are the last words of Leão Pacifico Isaac. He was dead in 2010. And he remains very little unknown here in Brazil yet. But we are working to talk about more other Brazilian writers there in these regions. Last year, we published a book about other Brazilian authors from Jewish origin in the Amazon region. Which ones is this the book? The Sephardites and Jews of Amazon. I'm in contact with another researchers from the region. I'm not in the region of Amazonia, I'm in the south of Brazil, but other professors there in the north region are working to study and to show the literature of the other Jewish authors, like Professor Alessandra Conde and Professor Silvia Benchimol Barros, which were the organizers of this book. But so the last words about my research in this book, Leon Pacific Zag was, I found him studying about the Jewish literature here in Brazil. And this was a great opportunity to link our Jewish people here from origin in Morocco, show their contact with Brazilian people here, because here in Brazil we have we have Jewish from all over the world, for a lot of different origins. In the north of Brazil, the most of them came from Morocco. So this is my little research. It's written in Portuguese. I'm sorry, but I can explain you more if you ask me some words. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you all for the presentation. I definitely learned something and I hope to learn more. Just want to do one technicality. For some reason, the link that we have to order the book isn't working. So if any of you have a different link, if you can put it in the chat. I tried to find it and I couldn't find another one. So in the meantime, I'm going to be opening up, I'm going to be allowing you to open your cameras and your microphones. I will not open your cameras for you. That would be creepy. But please do. I do have to put a plug that Jose has a chapter in our upcoming book from our conference on the Jews of Morocco, Jews and Muslim relations of Morocco. So we have this connection here, very exciting about it. If you have a question, just like wave at me or raise your hand in the, or a comment, or, oh, nobody has. See, everything was so clear. I love when that happens. Dove has a question. Hold on, I'm gonna, oh, let Yitzhak go first, and then we'll have Dove. Okay, Yitzhak.
First of all, very fascinating by all three speakers. Jose, I don't have to compliment him. I review him and compliment him all the time. About Hamburg, it was interesting, the decay that you portrayed. Also, though, it's not just they left the community because of plagues, etc. They also went east. That's not as researched. Like the Tijeras were some of the first Jews in Scandinavia, and then they went with the Danes to the Ukraine and the Baltics. Now, to Angela, it's fascinating. There's a lot of presentations about Sao Tome and Cape Verde, and obviously you explained a lot more of the economic background. My perception before was that they were really small. They didn't bring wives, and they didn't have such an economic base. But you contradicted that very eloquently. And obviously, if you can expound upon it, what is the influence of these Tangier and Mogador merchants? Because they're not small timers. These were very astute people. And what you're pointing to is an axis that I don't think we've understood about this coal mining station. It was like, if in its time, it was like the Suez Canal. And then obviously that because of the Suez Canal, that route wasn't as main. And to Philippe, it's fascinating. So I hope you can send me all these references. For over 30 years, I've amassed material on the Jews of the Amazons. It's known of their Moroccan roots. There were even Paitanim, even religious Jewish poets. But, you know, we know only vaguely their connection to the rubber trade, and Israelis go there a lot, you know, as adventurers after the army. But there's a lot there and a lot to be studied. And also you're not just pointing out history, you're pointing out the literature of various things, and it's very relevant. And it's also the other extreme, not exactly the Portuguese nation, but but part of the Jewish and Sephardic diaspora, which is unknown. It's exotic, but it's much more than that. It's authentic and vibrant, and it's also the whole story is the decline. So the literature doesn't exactly tell the decline, but it is part of the canon of Sephardic literature, which isn't even recognized in Jewish studies or hardly in Sephardic studies as a very pertinent field.
Thank you. I think that was more of a comment, so we're going to move on to Dove. Dove, you had a question or comment also?
Yes. First of all, my congratulations and compliments to José Tavim, to the lecturers and to the authors for the publication of this valuable book. My best wishes and good luck and encouragements to continue to make research on this area, on this, I will say, almost global perspective, but written mainly from Lusophone countries. I think that it is very, very, very important to counterbalance the hegemony of researches mainly written in English and sometimes in French. It's very interesting to see this kind now of balanced historiographical view. My comment is just to Hugo Martinez, in order not to monopolize the time. You mentioned, you compared very briefly but convincingly the charity policies in Hamburg and in Amsterdam, and I remember the last book of my colleague and friend Deborah Kaplan. She studied the charity policies of Ashkenazi communities in Germany. She studied the policies in Altona, in Frankfurt, and in Worms during the 17th century, precisely the time you research Hamburg, and she came to almost to the same conclusions. That is, when you see the second part of the 17th century, the policies of the Ashkenazi Jewish communities vis-a-vis wandering poors is very rude. Then my question is whether the policies adopted by the Sephardic community of Hamburg were not influenced either by the policies adopted by the Ashkenazi communities or by the specific environment of Germany, was even much more suffered from immigration due to disasters. Yeah, you mentioned some of them, and all of them, or at least most of them, were focused precisely in Germany. Thank you.
I don't know if I can respond.
Yeah, you can. I mean, sure, yeah.
I find it very interesting, the last, so the comparison that you made just now, because it was also, so Heinz Schilling, the historian, the German historian Heinz Schilling, if I'm not mistaken, he wrote an article in the 1990s or around that time, I think, also stressing the possible relationship or the possible influences between these two models of social welfare. So between in this case not the Ashkenazi communities and the Portuguese one, but interestingly between the Protestant community in Hamburg. So it's interesting because this is a matter that is not exactly well researched. So in which way these different communities influence each other. And in the case, for example, of the Protestants, of the Huguenots, it is known that they had a very similar process of disciplining, also the confessionalization. I think is of these communities. I think is something that Joseph Kaplan also touches upon in his latest articles. But I think one of the key element here is perhaps not so much that one. I would say that, for example, the almost non-existence of autonomous charitable societies in Hamburg, in the Portuguese community of Hamburg, points, I think, to the limitations of the community. For example, reduced financial resources, low population, small middle class, but also and above all to the highly centralizing and monopolizing policies conducted by the Mahamat during this period. So, for example, while other communities have been marked by the same dilemma between the balance between religious autonomy and institutional supervision, the Hamburg community has taken a more radical approach than its counterparts.
Thank you. So we're going to let also Florbella, since she's on that topic, I'm assuming as well. Yes, Florbella? You had your hand up.
I only have one thing to join to the discussion, because it was said that there were no books about the Portuguese community in Hamburg, and it's not correct, because at least Jochen Bottering wrote a PhD about Hamburg community, and she also studied the community of Hamburg. And me also, I had a postdoc about the Portuguese community of Hamburg, but what I was more interested was in the production of scientific and literary books. So it's more important to me. And I also consulted, of course, the protocol books of the community. So at least me and Jochen, that were coordinated also by Studmund Alevi in Hamburg, in the Institute of the Geschichte der Deutschen Juden. We were coordinated by Studmund Alevi, so at least Alevi knew that we were studying that.
Thank you. Nicole?
Yes, I just wanted to go on what Dr. Benoliel talked about Cape Verde. I went to Cape Verde a couple of times, and I was actually interested, and I interviewed some people from the Cohen family. And what was interesting to me is they were all in higher administrative positions. And we had to talk about that. One was a director of a hospital, another one. And somehow, I mean, they were Jewish from their father a long time. I mean, from their, from the male side, because basically it was a young man who came from Mogador at the time, where in Mogador, my understanding was it was pretty hard economically, and they will send some youngest Jewish men out to Cape Verde and make their life there with no return. And basically, they became quite prominent. And I understand from talking to them that there was a little bit of jealousy of the other Cape Verdean about the fact that they were prominent in administrative positions. So there was just one thing to me that was interesting. I was interested in the fact that you find so many people, so many different names, and that was very interesting to me, because when I went there, I was, I obviously did not do real work. I was just interested in things. And then also I found that some Jewish people were buried in Christians' cemetery. And even though they have, there are crosses and stuff like that, we can see that the stone themselves are different in quality from the other stones. And I had a discussion about that, about where the stones came from, because in the Jewish cemetery, the stones seem to be coming, it was very similar from what we call the Jerusalem stones, and very different from the other stones. And in the Christian cemeteries, I will look at the stones that were like quote unquote Jerusalem stones, and they will have names that were Jewish names. They had crosses. They were in the Christian cemeteries, but obviously they were. So, and about the stones, I tried to do something about trying to find how did they bring the stones there? I mean, what kind of stones? Where did they come from? And I talked to a geologist, and apparently, it could have been that they came also from somewhere around Spain or something, not, and apparently in the geological world, there is a connection between what's in Jerusalem and what's in Portugal or Spain somewhere, but I don't know more about that. So maybe you have some more ideas about that.
Yeah,
So
let her give a brief response.
Yes.
Do you have a response? Do you have a response?
Sorry, can I give all the answers already?
yes, I would love to.
Okay.
Short, yeah.
Okay. Very shortly, yes, Professor Kerem, thank you for your interest and questions. This St. Vincent port was the only way through Asia before the opening of the Suez Canal. Yes, that's why it was so important. And it also explains why we had about more than 10 or 15 Jewish merchants in this island. And then by the end of the 19th century, only one family settled. No? So it was also the case for Italian and Spanish and even Portuguese merchants that settled in this island, and then they left. In what concerns Mogador and Tangiers, these towns have a stronger connection to Portugal. Yes, of course. And we can also see that in the trajectory of these families. For instance, the families from Mogador that came to Cape Verde and established in Cape Verde, they had already lived in Lisbon or Algarve. Huh? So there is a stronger connection to continental Portugal. And as I said before, most of these merchants were from Tangiers. We know that they probably spoke Ladino and they understood the Portuguese and the Creole. Then in Cape Verde, it was easier for them. That's what I can say about women. In fact, there is a lot of documents that are not exploited, not only in Portugal, but mostly in Cape Verde, in the National Archives. So the more we go through the Cape Verdean archives, the more we see Moroccan Jewish women. Some from Gibraltar, very few, but Jewish women from Morocco, we see their names, for instance, in the courts documents, in the Cape Verdean courts, in the visas books, also in the books on foreign communities where we have the families and sometimes their children that were born in many places in Cape Verde and others. In what concerns the tombs and the cemeteries, we have, as I said, Jewish cemeteries in 3 islands, but the one in the capital is in the Catholic cemetery. It's a part of the Catholic cemetery. So I don't know if Mrs. Carol Castiel, I see that she's here. She is the president of Cape Verde Jewish Heritage Project that has financed this study I made, but mostly that has financed the renewal of all these tombs with funds from the King of Morocco. Maybe she can speak and explain about these tombs, because I know these stones, sorry, I know that it's been hard to restore these tombs because of the stones also of the material. Thank you.
Thank you.
Carol, do you want to make a comment?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Okay, thanks. I was in and out of this wonderful presentation. I'm very proud of Angela for the work she has done under our auspices, and we're hoping very much to publish her findings very soon. But just repeat the question with regard to the tombstones in the Christian cemetery in Praia.
For me, Nicole, okay.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi, Carol.
Bonjour.
The tombs, I found, I don't remember where they were, but anyway, in the Christian cemetery, I found tombs that had a cross, but they were the kind of stone was very different from the rest of the stones. And then the names were obviously Jewish names for me. And so whether they were Moranos, they kept it as Christian, didn't matter. But the point of the matter is that the stone itself was different. And that's the stone that we found in the Jewish cemeteries. Now, the Jewish cemeteries and the Christian cemeteries are very different kind of stones. And in this Christian cemeteries, I found, when I looked for the stones, the specific stones, I went there, and they had crosses, but they were Jewish names. And I think there might have been even
let's let
some
Carol
other
respond.
symbolics on the stone that would make me think they were also Jewish. Besides,
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you referring to Santo Antão in Paul?
I don't remember. It's
Okay.
somewhere.
Well, okay. Just quickly, briefly for our audience. These are four cemeteries. There are many the four Jewish cemeteries, including the Jewish burial plot in the capital Praia, are really strictly Jews insofar as their tombstones are in the Moroccan style, the horizontal, with even some of them have Hebrew etchings, and in Portuguese with even the Hebrew calendar date. I think you may be referring to, and there are tombstones in the island of Santo Antão, not in the two separate Jewish cemeteries, which we just renovated and preserved and have applied signage and which we're continuing to work on. I think you're referring to these tombstones, which are not strictly Christian. They look like the Moroccan style horizontal tombstones. Some of their names look like names we associate with New Christians, also known as, Moranos. But I can't say, we cannot say for sure, because they are in the Christian cemetery in Santo Antão. So it's a little bit beyond our ken, but we hope to inspire others to look at them and help us continue to document this amazing and important chapter in Cape Verdean and Jewish diaspora history.
Thanks.
Do you have something quick? I want to make sure that we end. I know your hand's up.
Yes, thank you. Just a quick response to Nicole. Back in 2007, I had a conversation with the then Israeli ambassador to Cape Verde, Gideon Behar, and showed him some photos I had just taken of the tombstones in the Verdean cemetery, the Jewish section that Carol mentioned she oversaw restored. And the ambassador, Bahar, immediately claimed that the stones themselves were actually literally Moroccan stones that had been imported from Morocco. That was his opinion. He's not a geologist, but he was immediately struck by that resemblance.
So when they say Moroccan, you mean one? You mean style, or you mean those stones came from Morocco?
He claimed that the physical stones that he was looking at in my photos
came from Morocco?
That's what he claimed. He's not a geologist, but that was his immediate impression.
Looks like Felipe wants to say one more thing, and then we'll close it off. Please.
I want to answer Mr. Carroll.
Please do.
Please. Leon Pacific Zag, Professor Carroll. he wrote about the decline of rubber specifically, because he lived there during this decline of the rubber cycle. So in this book, for example, he wrote about his cousin, specifically about his cousin. And his cousin is known as the last Jew of Itacoatiara, which is a city in the Amazon, because in the end of the rubber cycle, most of the Jewish merchants from the inner Amazon forest, they went to the cities, the main cities. And some of the Jewish from Orange people, Orange Jewish in the north, they came from to the south, to the biggest cities of Brazil. So Leon Pacifica Zaghi writes about the rainforest, the merchants, and of course the end of the cycle of the rubber here.
But we're talking about the
I don't want to go back and forth now because I want to make sure everybody comes back.
We're talking about the Brazilian Amazons, not Iquitos, right?
Not Iquitos. No, not Iquitos.
Okay, thank you all, and thank you, Felipe, for reminding me about that. I apologize. Thank you. And thank you to all for coming. Like I said, usually the discussion, as much as I enjoy the presentations, the discussion is often what brings up and kind of unpacks a lot of it. Thank you and congratulations to Jose. This was really wonderful. Thank you for bringing it to us. And whoever can read Portuguese, I hope you read the book and that you've learned something from this. So thank you all. Have a good day, evening, good night, wherever you are.
Bye-bye.
And thank you to Angela and Hugo and Felipe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Drora, for your organization.
Okay, thank you, Dara.
Wonderful.
Obrigada, José. Ângela, foi ótimo. Obrigada.
Rode.